Another a major sign is the Dajjal. Now I just want to read because I think it's very interesting. This was written in the last century, but it's taken out of classical Arabic books.
Is this the Antichrist?
Yeah, this is about the Antichrist. The word in Arabic is from Dajjala. It means to smear a camel with tar. In other words, covering the whole body with tar. Smearing the part that is mangy or scabies. So it has the idea of hiding illness or sickness, covering it over, right? Covering it over with a black pitch. To lie, to conceal truth with falsehood, concealing the truth. He enchanted or fascinated. So the idea that the Antichrist is an enchanter or a fascinator. People are fascinated by him. He compressed, he traversed the regions or tracts of the earth or land. Now, the Prophet said that the Dajjal would enter every city on the planet. When they asked him what would his speed be like, he said like a wind that leaves a cloud in its trail. كَرِيحٍ اسْتَدْبَرَتْهُ السَّحَابِ literally means like a wind that leaves a cloud in its trail. And in another tradition, he said he would ride a white donkey made of iron whose span between his two ears was 40 cubits. بَغْلَةٌ min hadid, as the hadith says. And then he says, to confuse, to mix things, having one eye. The Prophet Muhammad, did you have a question?
How do you spell this? What's this word Djal?
Dajjal. Dajjal is the word in Arabic for Antichrist, which is better translated by the Arabs in the Arabic language as the imposter Christ.
But Christ is used, huh?
Oh, Christ, yeah, Masih ad-Dajjal, the false Messiah. Very much so.
In Islam, the concept of the Messiah is a one-time thing represented by Jesus of Nazareth. Or
Yeah, Jesus is seen as the Messiah.
the Messiah. So this is an anti.
This is going to be anti-Jesus.
the Christ.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's interesting because if you study the Islamic Jesus, I think it gives you a very good picture of the idea of an anti-Jesus. Because anti in Greek, antis also means in place of, instead of. It doesn't really mean against. The original meaning of anti in Greek as a prefix means instead of. And that's closer to the Arabic interpretation, which is imposter or in place of, pretending to be. The Islamic Jesus, and I actually translate, I'm hoping to get it out this year, but I translate all of the Arabic sayings of Jesus because there's actually more sayings in the Islamic tradition of Jesus than there are in the New Testament. And most of them deal with the dangers of the world, of materialism. So I find it really interesting that, this idea of an imposter, that Jesus is, the whole thrust of the Islamic Jesus is salvation through giving up material wants. And the idea of an antichrist is salvation through desire of material goods, that it is material goods that will make you happy, that is material goods that will save you. So I think there's a very materialistic element in here. And also the idea of being one-eyed is that part of binocular vision is depth perception, which you lose with one eye. And so the idea that that the Dajjal or the Antichrist does not have a depth perception. He's a two-dimensional being. He sees things in two dimensions. And some of the Muslim scholars do not consider it an individual, but most do. And and you'll see it as we go on here. Having one eye is one of them. Also to gild a thing. So in other words, you take lead, you put gold over it. That's Dajjal. So to make something that's cheap or insignificant look very worthwhile or significant. Cover the land with water. He put his land into a right or proper state, prepared it, improved it with dung. So to spread dung on the earth, to spread feces on the earth. Dajjal, dung for manuring land. And then Dajjal is refuse, lowest, basest, or meanest sort of people. the lowest, basest, or meanest sort of people. Dajjal, a gilder, a liar, conceals truth with falsehood, who deceives, deludes, beguiles, circumvents, outwits, much or often, very deceitful, the great deceiver. And then a great company of men, Dajjala in Arabic means a great company of men journeying together, covering the ground by their multitude, or a company of men journeying together, carrying goods for sale. Right? So trafficking goods all over the place. Masih al-Kadhab, the false Christ or Antichrist, is to be a certain man. Right? Comes forth in the last days. So having one eye or eyebrow. So you get the idea there. This is classical, coming out of classical dictionaries. The idea of the Antichrist is that towards the end there will be a type of false salvation through love of the world and material things and these things. And I think the Muslims definitely have a very strong sense of the Dajjal, because at the end of the prayer, you actually make a prayer that says, and I seek refuge from the tribulation of the Dajjal in the last period. And the Prophet Muhammad said, every prophet has warned his people about the Dajjal, but I will tell you something that no other prophet told his people. He only has one eye. So that was the tradition that he said about the Dajjal, that he would have one eye. And there's a very interesting, some of the Muslims said, the television is like a Dajjal, it's a one-eyed type beast. And there's an interesting section in Lewis Mumford's, the second volume of his work on the Mega Machine, which is the one eye of Re, the all-seeing eye of Re. And he talks about that the Mega Machine, one of the things about the Mega Machine, he said traditionally, was that they didn't have an all-seeing power, these previous kings and rulers. And so he said what's happening though is that, and he wrote this in 1961, he said, in the near future, we have theoretically at our hands a machine that will able to monitor all of our life, which is the computer. And he said that, and this is what Foucault called the panoptic society, the all-seeing society. And it was designed after the idea of a prison system that Jeremy Bentham designed, which was where you had a centerpiece, utilitarianism. You had this center, you only needed one guard. And around the guard were all the prison cells. So in the middle was a tower at which this one guard could watch everything at one time. And so the idea of the all-seeing, the state apparatus in which we're all monitored. A really interesting book about this subject is called I can see the cover because it's got that pyramid with the eye on it. It's The Naked Consumer. Very interesting book about how we're watched. A lot of people don't know this, but when you buy things with your credit cards, they go under biodatas, and so they can work out. Like I started getting all this stuff about like different types of books. I'd get these like things from spiritual book companies and things, because they worked out, you buy them and then they sell, they do biodata on you, find out what type of books you like to read, and then they sell that list to people. When we had a baby, the first child, then like a week later, we got all these things about, and my wife was like, wow, what, this is a classic problem with religion, right? It's a sign, right? No. There's somebody that monitors for the corporations all the births in the county, and they sell your address to people, right? It wasn't a sign, right? Or it was a sign that we're in big trouble, right? Everything's being watched by these. So the idea just of, this kind of panoptic culture where, and the interesting thing now is this idea of computers with the actual camera on it. Very interesting phenomenon, because who else can watch, right? Who else can watch while you're having your conversations and things like that? So there is an idea of this, the Antichrist and the end. And most Muslims do believe in a second coming of Jesus. Vast majority of Muslims. There are many hadiths that confirm it's not actually mentioned directly in the Quran, but most Muslims do believe in a second coming of Christ towards the end of time.
Well, wouldn't that sort of like mean that Muhammad wasn't the seal of the process of Jesus?
Good point. And that was something that the scholars did deal with. He will not come back as a prophet bringing a Sharia. According to the Muslims, he actually comes back and he confirms the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad. That's how the Muslims view it. That he comes back. The question was, wouldn't that mean that the Prophet Muhammad wasn't the seal? But it would, in the sense that the Prophet is after Jesus. The Prophet Muhammad said, there's no prophet between me and Jesus. And he said that all of the prophets are brothers. We have the same father, which is the religion of the deen of Islam, with different mothers, meaning the different sharias or the different sacred laws.